In the year 1325, a war broke out between two powerful Italian cities. Not for land, not for gold, but for a wooden bucket. Yes, a single bucket. Soldiers from the city of Medina secretly entered their rival city Bologna and stole a bucket from a public well. Sounds like a prank, right? But Bologna demanded it back. Medina refused. And just like that, over 30,000 soldiers marched to war. The Battle of Zappolino followed, where thousands died, all over a bucket that still exists today. And here's the strangest part. Medina never gave it back. Even now, that same bucket is displayed in a tower as a symbol of victory. History's pettiest war was fought for something you'd find in your kitchen.
In 1919, the city of Boston experienced one of the strangest disasters in history. Not fire. Not war. Not an earthquake. Molasses. A massive steel tank holding over 2 million gallons of molasses suddenly burst. Witnesses heard a deep rumble, like a train. Then a 25-foot-high wave of thick, sticky syrup rushed through the streets at 35 miles per hour. Buildings were crushed. Horses trapped. People swept away. Rescue workers struggled, because everything was coated in glue-like liquid. 21 people died. To this day, locals say, on hot summer days, you can still smell sweetness in the air. History calls it the Great Molasses Flood. In 1883, the sky changed color. After the massive eruption of Krakatoa, the explosion was so powerful it was heard nearly 3,000 miles away. Entire islands were destroyed. Tsunamis wiped out coastal villages. But something stranger happened next. Ash and dust shot high into the atmosphere, spreading around the entire planet. For months, the sun appeared blue. In some places, the moon looked green. Sunsets turned deep purple and blood red. Temperatures dropped worldwide. People feared the end of the world. But it wasn't magic. It was science. Tiny volcanic particles in the atmosphere bent and filtered sunlight. One explosion. That painted the entire Earth. On December 26, 2004, a massive earthquake struck beneath the Indian Ocean. It measured 9.1, one of the strongest ever recorded. The quake triggered a massive tsunami. Waves traveled at jet speed across the ocean. When they reached land, entire cities disappeared. In places like Banda Aceh, buildings were flattened within minutes. People had no warning. No sirens. No escape. Over 230,000 people across 14 countries lost their lives. The disaster reshaped coastlines and changed global tsunami warning systems forever. It was a reminder. The ocean can look calm until it isn't.
In 1962, in a small mining town called Centralia, a routine cleanup turned into a nightmare. Workers were burning trash in a landfill. But beneath the ground were old coal mines. The fire slipped into a hidden tunnel, and it never went out. At first, residents noticed small cracks in the streets. Then smoke rising from the earth. Carbon monoxide began seeping into homes. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened beneath him. Steam poured out of the ground. The temperature underground reached hundreds of degrees. The government eventually declared the town unsafe. Families were relocated. Homes were demolished. Today, only a few residents remain. The fire is still burning beneath the surface. Experts believe it could burn for another 200 years. An entire town, abandoned, because the ground itself is on fire.
In 1945, a German submarine, called German submarine U-1206, was hiding deep underwater. But then, one sailor used the toilet and made a mistake. The submarine had a complex, high-pressure toilet system. Seawater rushed inside, mixing with battery acid. It created deadly chlorine gas. The crew started choking. They had No choice but to surface. But the moment they did, enemy aircraft spotted them and attacked. The submarine was lost, all because of a toilet.
13 days. That's how close the world came to nuclear war in 1962. The United States discovered that the Soviet Union was secretly building nuclear missile bases in Cuba, just 90 miles away from American soil. Panic spread across the United States. People feared this could be the beginning of World War III. The man in charge was John F. Kennedy. Military leaders demanded an immediate airstrike. Others wanted a full invasion. One wrong move could trigger a nuclear exchange. Instead, Kennedy chose a naval blockade. For 13 days, the world waited for someone to make a mistake. But a secret deal was made. The Soviet Union removed its missiles from Cuba, and the United States quietly removed its missiles from Turkey. A nuclear war was avoided, just barely. In 2009, a passenger plane was flying high above the Atlantic Ocean. Suddenly, the pilot collapsed mid-flight, dead. Over 100 passengers were on board. There was no co-pilot with enough experience to land the aircraft. Panic spread inside the cockpit, but the plane had something else, an advanced autopilot system. For the next 2 hours, the aircraft flew completely on its own, maintaining altitude, avoiding bad weather, and guiding itself toward the runway with help from air traffic control. The autopilot system successfully landed the plane, saving every single person on board. In 1988, a man named Mehran Karimi Nasseri arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport. But there was a problem. He had no passport, no citizenship, and no country that would accept him. He couldn't enter France, and he couldn't leave the airport either. So, he stayed. Days became months. Months became years. He slept on airport benches, ate food from terminals, and lived inside the airport for 18 years without ever stepping outside.
In 1891, a sailor named James Bartley was reportedly swallowed by a sperm whale near the Falkland Islands. The crew hunted the whale. When they cut it open, they found Bartley alive inside, unconscious, skin bleached from stomach acid, but breathing. Some historians say it's impossible. Others claim it really happened. Whether myth or fact, the story spread worldwide because it felt biblical. Like Jonah, a man surviving inside a whale. There is an island in the Indian Ocean where modern civilization is forbidden. It's called North Sentinel Island, and the people who live there have rejected the outside world for thousands of years. The Sentinelese tribe has no contact with modern society. No electricity. No internet. No written language that we know of. When outsiders approach, they respond with arrows. In 2018, an American missionary attempted to land on the island. He was killed. The Indian government strictly bans travel there because contact could bring deadly diseases to the isolated tribe. North Sentinel Island remains one of the last truly untouched places on Earth. A reminder that even in 2026, there are still mysteries on the map. In 1831, sailors near Sicily witnessed something impossible. An island rising from the sea. It was formed by an underwater volcanic eruption. They named it Ferdinandia Island. For a few weeks, nations argued over who owned it. Britain claimed it. France claimed it. Italy claimed it. Then, it sank. The ocean swallowed it whole. The island had existed for only months. Today, it rests just below sea level. waiting for another eruption. A country once fought for land. That doesn't even exist. In 1848, something impossible happened. One of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth stopped. After a violent storm, strong winds pushed massive ice fields into the Niagara River. The ice jammed together, forming a natural dam. And just like that, the water feeding Niagara Falls slowed, then nearly stopped. For almost 30 hours, the thunderous roar was gone. Locals walked across the exposed riverbed. They discovered rusted weapons, old coins, even human remains from past accidents. But the silence didn't last. The ice eventually broke apart, sending a sudden surge of water downstream. Within minutes, the falls roared back to life. Nature had paused, and then pressed play again. In 1971, deep beneath Stanford, a psychological experiment began. It was led by Philip Zimbardo. The goal was simple: simulate a prison. Volunteers were randomly assigned roles: guards and prisoners. At first, it seemed harmless. But within 48 hours, things changed. Guards began humiliating prisoners. Prisoners showed signs of emotional breakdown. Some cried. Some begged to leave. The experiment was meant to last 2 weeks. It ended after just 6 days. Because it had become too real. The Stanford prison experiment shocked the world. It revealed something disturbing. Sometimes, it's not monsters who create cruelty. It's power. And how quickly ordinary people can change when given control. In 1986, villagers living near Lake Neos heard a loud rumble. But it wasn't an earthquake or a storm. The lake had exploded. A massive cloud of invisible carbon dioxide gas rose into the air. Within minutes, the gas spread through nearby villages. People and animals collapsed instantly. Over 1,700 people died in their sleep. There was no fire, no lava, no warning, just a silent, deadly cloud. In 2004, a massive iceberg broke away in Antarctica. It was named Iceberg B-15A. When it drifted into the Ross Sea, it blocked penguins from reaching food. Parent penguins had to travel much farther to hunt. Many never returned. Over time, an estimated 1.5 million penguins died, not from predators, but from geography. One piece of ice changed an entire ecosystem. It proved something chilling. Nature doesn't need violence to be deadly.
In 79 AD, a powerful volcano, called Mount Vesuvius, suddenly erupted. Nearby stood the Roman city of Pompeii. Within minutes, ash began falling from the sky. People thought it was just dust. But then, rocks, fire, toxic gas, a deadly cloud rushed through the streets. At over 100 kilometers per hour, buildings collapsed. People froze where they stood. By morning, Pompeii was gone, buried under 20 feet of ash. The entire city vanished overnight and stayed hidden for over 1,500 years. In 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge opened to the public. It was one of the longest suspension bridges in the world. But just 4 months later, winds of only 40 miles per hour began to blow. The bridge started to move, then twist, then violently shake. Drivers abandoned their cars. Within minutes, the entire bridge collapsed into the water below. Engineers later discovered it wasn't a storm or an earthquake, just wind that caused $1 million bridge to fail.
On June 28, 1914, a young man named Gavrilo Princip stood near a bridge in Sarajevo. He wasn't famous. He wasn't powerful. But he carried a pistol. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand's car made a wrong turn, Princip stepped forward. 2 shots. Those bullets didn't just kill a man. They triggered alliances, mobilized armies, pulled nations into conflict. Within weeks, Europe was at war. That single moment in Sarajevo ignited World War I. 1 bridge. 2 bullets. Millions dead.